Daily Words of God.
Knowledge of ancient culture and history, spanning several thousand years, has closed off man's thinking and notions, and his mental outlook so tightly as to render them impervious and non-biodegradable. People live in the 18th circle of hell, where, just as if they have been banished by God into the dungeons, the light may never be seen. Feudal thinking has so oppressed people that they can barely breathe and are suffocating. They have not the slightest jot of strength to resist. All they do is endure and endure in silence. Never has anyone dared to struggle or stand up for righteousness and justice. People simply live a life worse than an animal's, under the blows and abuse of feudal ethics, day after day and year after year. They have never thought to seek out God to enjoy happiness in the human world. It is as if people have been beaten down to the point where they are like the fallen leaves of autumn, withered, desiccated, and yellow-brown. People have long since lost their memory. They live helpless in the hell which is called the human world, waiting for the coming of the last day, so that they may perish together with this hell, as if the last day that they yearn for is the day when man shall enjoy restful peace. Feudal ethics have taken the life of man into Hades, further weakening man's power to resist. All sorts of oppression push man, step by step, to fall deeper into Hades, farther and farther away from God, until today he has become a complete stranger to God and makes haste to avoid him when they meet. Man does not heed him and leaves him standing alone to one side as if man has never known him, has never seen him before. Yet God has been waiting for man all through the long journey of human life, never hurling his irrepressible fury toward him, merely waiting quietly, without a word, for man to repent and start anew. God long ago came into the human world to share the sufferings of the human world with man. In all the years that he has lived with man, no one has discovered his existence. God only endures in silence the misery of shabbiness in the human world while carrying out the work he brought in person. He continues to endure for the sake of the will of God the Father and for the sake of the needs of mankind, undergoing sufferings never before experienced by man. In man's presence, he has quietly waited upon him, and in man's presence he has humbled himself for the sake of God the Father's will, and also for the sake of the needs of mankind. Knowledge of ancient culture has surreptitiously stolen man from the presence of God and turned him over to the king of devils and its progeny. The 4 books and 5 classics have taken man's thinking and notions into another age of rebellion, causing him to give even greater adulation than before to those who compiled the book, classic of documents, and, as a result, to further exacerbate his notions about God. Unbeknownst to man, the king of devils heartlessly cast God out from his heart and then occupied it itself with triumphant glee. Since that time, man became possessed of an ugly and wicked soul, and of the countenance of the king of devils. A hatred of God filled his chest, and the spiteful malice of the king of devils spread within man day after day until he was utterly consumed. Man no longer had the least bit of freedom and had no way of breaking free from the toils of the king of devils. He had no choice but to be taken captive on the spot, to surrender and fall down in submission in its presence. Long ago, when man's heart and soul was still in its infancy, the king of devils planted in it the seed of the tumor of atheism, teaching him such fallacies as study science and technology, realize the four modernizations, and there is no such thing as God in the world. Not only that, it shouts out at every opportunity, "Let us rely on our industrious labor to build a beautiful homeland," asking each and every person to be prepared from childhood to render faithful service to their country. Man, unwitting, was brought into its presence, where it unhesitatingly arrogated all the credit unto itself. Never did it have any sense of shame. Moreover, it shamelessly seized God's people and dragged them back into its house, where it leaped like a mouse onto the table and had man worship it as God. What a desperado! It cries out scandalous, shocking things, such as, "There is no such thing as God in the world." The wind comes from transformations according to natural laws. Rain comes when water vapor, meeting with cold temperatures, condenses into drops that fall to earth. An earthquake is the shaking of the surface of the earth due to geological changes. Drought is due to dryness in the air caused by nucleonic disruption on the sun's surface. These are natural phenomena. Where in all this is there an act of God? There are even those who shout out statements like the following, statements that should not be given voice. Man evolved from apes in the ancient past, and the world today comes from a succession of primitive societies, starting from approximately an eon ago. Whether a country flourishes or declines rests entirely in the hands of its people. In the background, it makes man hang it on the wall or place it on the table to pay homage and make offerings to it. At the same time that it cries out, "There is no God," it sets itself up as God, with summary roughness, pushing God out of the bounds of the earth, while standing in God's place and taking up the role of the king of devils. How utterly lost to reason! It makes one hate it to the very bone. It seems that God and it are sworn enemies, and the two cannot coexist. It schemes to chase God away while it roams free, outside the reach of law. Such a king of devils it is. How can its existence be tolerated? It will not rest until it has made a mess of God's work and left it all in a complete shambles, as if it wants to oppose God to the bitter end, until either the fish dies or the net breaks, deliberately setting itself against God and pressing in ever closer. Its hideous face having long since been completely unmasked, it is now bruised and battered and in a sorry condition. Yet still it will not relent in its hatred of God, as if only by devouring God in one mouthful will it be able to relieve the hatred pent up in its heart. How can we tolerate it, this enemy of God? Only its eradication and complete extermination will bring our life's wish to fruition. How can it be allowed to continue running rampant? It has corrupted man to such a degree that man does not know the heaven sun and has become deadened and devoid of feeling. Man has lost normal human reason. Why not offer up our whole being to destroy it and burn it up to eliminate all worries for the future and allow the work of God to sooner reach unprecedented splendor? This gang of scoundrels has come into the world of men and reduced it to turmoil. They have brought all of humanity to the edge of a precipice, secretly planning to push them over to be dashed to pieces, so that they may then devour their corpses. They vainly hope to break up God's plan and enter into a match with Him, staking everything on a single throw of the dice. That is by no means easy. The cross has been prepared, after all, for the king of devils, who is guilty of the most heinous crimes. God does not belong to the cross. He has already tossed it aside for the devil. God has long before now emerged victorious and no longer feels sorrow over the sins of mankind, but will bring salvation to all mankind.